This is Trucks and Tractor Power, featuring the superstars of the four-wheel and off-road Jamboree Nationals Monster Truck Challenge. One competition from Memphis Motorsports Park. Here is another two-frame truck, barefoot, the Chevrolet Fred Schaefer out of Pontoon Beach, Illinois.
Gary, you know, you're giving us a rundown a moment ago on the pairings as he goes up against Scott Stevens out of Texas. Well, the barefoot truck is your current national champion with one of the sanctioning bodies, the SRO Pace people. So he's carrying their colors too. Chevrolet's a pair. Let's see what's going to happen. Advantage should go to the barefoot by virtue of being the new chassis setup. But
look at the air that he has.
Tremendous hang time by Schaefer. He completely cleared both sets of cars, Gary Lee.
Well, barefoot in a tube-frame truck, a Chevrolet, knocks out another Chevrolet, the Auto Value King Krunch.
Boy, Scott Stevens with the cantilever truck ran him hard, but the new truck, the new technology, we're going to be talking about that the rest of the day. Watch the amount of time he stays near. Look at that.
Yeah, look at the air time. When you talk about technology, you're talking about suspensions. You can see the suspension work here on barefoot. He takes the victory. A $100,000 truck that took 6 months to build. Here's a good look at John Moore and No Problem out of Lafayette, Tennessee.
In the previous run, we were talking about the chassis differences that Scott Stevens will be lining up in the other lane against Moore. The difference here is the length of the truck, okay? Stevens in the far lane, as he's being checked over by his crew chief, is a longer truck. That should be to his advantage. No problem. Lane closest to us, shorter wheelbase, a quicker truck, if you will. Yeah,
right there, Stevens has the advantage, but goes almost out of bounds on one side. Now he almost goes out of bounds on the left side. He was all over that lane.
He's still trying to shut in. Okay, he gets her shut off, okay.
But watch again. First Army, he's off to his right. Now he comes over the second jump and he heads to his left.
They're just launching in all kind of different ways today here in Memphis. But the longer truck is definitely the way to go. Now,
and here is Scott Stevens in the Auto Value King Krunch. And his competition will be Andy Brass in Bigfoot 8.
Well, Gary, as we've traveled all over the country, anybody that follows this sport knows these guys have gone tooth and nail after each other. Well, what's more appropriate in Memphis than, as we've said it before, the Battle of the Blues? Who's going to win it, Ford or Chevrolet?
Well, it looks like Andy Brass in the Ford right now has the measure, and he'll take the victory. Oh, that is a combination of equipment and driver.
Yeah, there's a rhythm set up there. Andy Brass has just got a seat-of-the-pants feel for driving that monster truck.
The time right there is 7.57. 7.57. That will be the quickest time thus far. Well, round one competition continues. The final pairing will see Scott Stevens out of Texas in the Auto Value King Krunch against Pat Suma in Above and Beyond.
We're familiar with Stevens. We've seen him quite a bit. He runs the national circuit. Suma in a far lane again. He's one of these rookie drivers trying to step up and run with these guys. Boy, the experience shows real quick, doesn't it, Gary?
Well, the lane choice went to Stevens. He was the faster qualifier of this pairing, and he takes the victory. He will advance to the quarterfinals with, well, a no-problem victory, actually. And there is Scott Stevens in the Auto Value King Krunch, and there is Gary Porter, the fastest loser from round two in the Carolina Crusher.
At this point in time, you expect there to be a theme song in the background, and the song needs to be Only the Strong Survive.
A pair of Chevys side by side, and it's going to be Scott Stevens through another barricade. Where's he going?
Right outside the television truck.
And the Carolina Crusher, Gary Porter, takes the victory. I do believe. Let's look again. There is Scott Stevens. He is okay as he climbs out to a nice ovation from the fans here in Bloomsburg. I think that Scott Stevens really had the advantage in that run. Army, let's watch again and see where he gets in trouble. But it looks to me like he's leading.
He is leading. What happens when the chassis settles, it springs to the left rear. Now he's just two-wheeling.
Right through that Hydra barricade again. We look at it head on. And as he goes off to the right, Gary Porter goes to victory.
And in the industry, Gary, we call that a Charmin run.
I guess that'd make him the Mr. Wimple of monster trucks as he hits another barricade there. Armin, you're down there with Scott.
Scott, what caused it? Something, the truck acted completely different than rounds previous.
Yeah, you know, the truck really hooked up good and left. You know, I didn't even see Gary in there, and it was the second quickest pass, I think, of the night here. And, you know, I just watered the track just to keep the dust down. You know, the evolution of this sport is to cutting those tires so we save our weight. We lose a lot of tread. And we get down there and we've got enough power to spin the tires. Even though you're going 40 miles an hour, you can spin them. And we got down there, and I actually didn't even see Gary. I thought, we pretty well had everything. And we got down to the finish line. I tried to gather a little bit more so we could go out the big end with some mile per hour. And when I got in it, the truck just went away and started coming around on me. And drove it into that water barrier pretty hard because I knew that I didn't want to be going slow into it, tear something up. And once I got around the water barrier, then I had fences and people and TV crews running, but it didn't hit nobody, didn't hurt the truck.
And look who's coming up. There is Snake Bite. And Snake Bite goes up against Scott Stevens in the Auto Value King Krunch.
Gary, there's a couple different theories here on the monster trucks. I want you to notice the Snake Bite truck, the motor location to the front, basically in the stock location as the truck. Stevens on the near side, he runs the mid-motor or rear motor setup. The monster truck fraternity is still trying to figure out the hot handle.
Well, on paper, it would look that King Krunch would have the advantage. He was the faster qualifier of these two. Pretty close, really close. Hang on, is he going to go on over? No, the Snake Bite almost got upside down.
I tell you, it looked like the Blue Angels Precision Flying Team. They both got to the end of the track and went opposite directions. Look at this, both drivers doing a superb job.
Well, Scott has the advantage right here, Army, but look, the final 100 feet, Snake Bite almost gets him. Well, you're down there in the pit area. You've collected both the drivers.
Gary, one thing's kind of interesting in drag racing, ET's important. We've got an interesting situation here. The loser actually went quicker. Colt, the word we get is you were quicker, but he got to the other end.
Yeah, Army, I was going down through there. I seen he was a little bit ahead of me, so I really stood into it pretty hard. And this grass was really slick down at the end, and we had our hands tied up and was trying to get it under control. And I had to let out just for a minute, and that's when he probably got me.
You're kind of being a nice guy. Before we went on camera, you're kind of taking a cheap shot at him. Scott, Auto Value going to the next round, what would you do different?
It was a good race. I was worried about getting disqualified. That Snake Bite truck, no telling what they're going to do to you out there. It was just a good race. He didn't run over me like, he told me he was going to, so it was a good thing.
And here's a look at Scott Stevens in the Auto Value King Krunch, and he goes up against Fred Schaefer and Barefoot.
It's kind of interesting. Schaefer comes in here. The scenario is almost like a gunfighter. He's not supposed to be here. I don't think these guys want him here. Scott Stevens knows he is going to have the race of his life on his hand right now to get past that Barefoot truck. These guys don't compete against each other that often. Stevens jumped him on the light, Gary.
Oh, he got a good cut, but look at the air. Fred Schaefer way up in the air. Oh, problem for Scott Stevens. He is upside down. That truck looks like it's really been hurt. We'll watch to see for Scott if Scott can climb out as the crew runs over there, the safety crew, his crew. They look in the cage. Look at the destruction to that Chevrolet. They're peeling the fiberglass away now. We can only wait. Well, Scott is out of the truck.
Gary, his crew chief, Tracy Smart, is an EMT. He's with him right now. Larry Hoffman, Blower Drive Service. The right people are there, but meanwhile, Barefoot's trying to work his way back. The race for the next round gets ready, but the question at hand, how bad does Scott Stevens get hurt on this?
And how bad does Scott tear up the truck? Obviously, the truck is not our concern when a driver may be injured, but it looks like he hit that rough spot over there in that left lane. That turned him sideways.
It's like hooking a rut in a sprint car. You've used that before. It's exactly what happened. This camera angle should show you real good. Look at the air, the hang time Schaefer had on the left of your screen. Now he pulls back on Stevens. Stevens, bad
right there. Yeah, he catches that rut and rolls him on over. A lot of damage.
Well, Gary, that run tore up two good monster trucks. Scott Stevens seems to be the worst for wear. Schaefer's going to be back in the next round. They right the Stevens truck. The crew chief's looking at it. I wonder what's going through his mind right now, Gary Lee. Check it out. Still taking care of the sponsor.
We'll check on Scott as we return to Bloomsburg. And there is the damage to the Creative fiberglass body on King Krunch. The driver is okay. He is with Army Armstrong.
Scott, first of all, you okay?
Yeah, it's a pretty hard tumble. I've done it before, but boy, you never get used to them. And that one, it just lasted so long, and it's it hurt.
Do you have any idea what caused the flip? Everybody, I'm not going to put any thoughts in your mind. What do you think caused it?
I have no idea. I thought it was a really good run. The truck got a little crooked, but no more crooked than it's probably done 100 times before. It just when it landed, I thought it was a pretty decent race. I thought Fred had a little lead on me, but I didn't. And then all of a sudden it was Katie bar the door. Everything from all I could see was dirt, and I couldn't tell from one end to the other, and all I was reaching was for kill switches.
Well, I'll tell you, you did a real good job. Your crew's over here waiting. They're anxious to get back to you. Thanks for stopping by and telling us you're okay. Sorry about the bad luck.
All right, no problem. Thank you, Army.
Well, here's a look at John Moore out of Lafayette, Tennessee, and the short wheelbase Ford Bronco. They call it No Problem. And here's Scott Stevens in the Auto Value King Krunch. This truck has taken its abuse. Earlier this season at Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, watch the ride that Scott takes. Crosses the finish line upside down.
Oh, high sides it big time. He's an old motorcycle racer. He knows what it feels like, the high side one. But this is how you put them back together, Gary.
Well, it took a little longer than what we got time to show you right here, but they put it back together in the shops in Spring, Texas. Now, once they get it back together and they get it painted, they are here in Canfield. This was just last night, and watch what happens as he goes up against Snakebite.
First run, brand new truck.
Upside down again, this time all the way over. Scott again is uninjured, but he tears the truck up. So now this is in qualifying today.
You know, this is like any kind of motorsport. You've just got to go for the gusto. The front suspension breaks apart on you. You see the tie rod across the front of the vehicle. But you're going to play with the big boys. You got to get off the porch, Gary.
And this is why you have crew members. Tracy Smart certainly earning his money as they put that truck back together several times. He's one of the few crew chiefs that actually stays in radio contact with the driver during the competition. But here is round one, No Problem, and King Krunch.
A lot of people don't realize that crew chief used to be an editor for a magazine. Let's go back to the racing. Short wheelbase Ford having problems. Stevens takes his Chevrolet the next round and still has problems, Gary.
Tell you what, he has to be hanging on every time he goes out in this Chevrolet. He has been upside down so many times.
These guys have been snake bit so many times the last couple times they've been out. They're glad just to see a run where it stays on 4 wheels.
If they had a number on that truck, it would be 69. They could read it right side up or upside down. It's been a tough season for Scott Stevens, but here he is standing with Army Armstrong.
Well, Gary, as you well know, some of the best today start with the worst today. Scott, I think that's your scenario. A lot of problems in qualifying, but you come back and you're still in this thing.
Yeah, you know, it's really a battle out there just to stay in the program with these guys. And, you know, after 2 rollovers back-to-back, you know, we were a little apprehensive. And then out there in qualifying, we like to put it on its top again and broke a lot of parts in that qualifying run. We put her all back together with about 2 or 3 seconds to spare, I think, to get called to the line. Truck ran good. Our time was a little off of what we need to make this program and really be competitive today. But you know, we're going to go around at a time, and we're just happy to be there.
And here is a well-battered Scott Stevens, the Auto Value King Krunch, and he goes up against John Breen in the Micro Machine.
You talk about snake bite. Scott Stevens feels he's been that way. But, you know, they got up back on the horse that threw them. They've made their first run. Let's see how hard he goes. Look at that, like it never happened before, like a gunfighter. He's going for the throat.
Oh, and I think he got it.
Whoa, he's
and
going
he's
over
upside
again.
down again. All the way over. Scott Stevens has to be saying, oh, no, not again. The crew runs over there.
They're talking to him.
He's moving in the cockpit. He apparently is okay, but how many times can you roll one over before you finally throw up your hands and say, I think I've had enough of this?
You know, this says a lot about the Cobra seat that he runs and all his safety equipment. He's told me many times, I don't really, you know, because of the safety equipment, he runs the Simpson belts and the Simpson suit and all this stuff. Safety's important. He's got the Cobra seat to keep him strapped in. And believe me, if that stuff didn't work, he would be hurt by now as many times as he's gone over.
Aside from qualifying, he has been upside down, what, 3 of his last 4 runs,
Exactly.
I think?
Exactly. It's coming out. The rescue people right here with us.
The ambulance was there almost immediately.
Yeah, good safety crew.
He's had his bell rung. He wants to clear the cobwebs out right now and take some time to collect his thoughts. A little wobbly. That was a wild ride.
You know, it's almost like there's something in the truck that's not doing what it's supposed to. Watch the front wheels. I think he's still going straight, but something's making that truck turn. You notice the truck is angled to the right. Then when it hits, it hooks and goes 180 degrees back to the left, Gary. So he's staying straight with the steering wheel. The chassis is reacting, and there's some kind of force throwing that truck one way or the other, and it's not the same direction every time. Gary, they're going to have to go back to Texas and put a new chassis under that truck.
Armin, you're down there with Scott Stevens.
Scott, some days are diamonds and some days are stone. You picked up a big rock here. You can't shake this black cloud hanging over you.
Yeah, you know, we're getting some speed and we're running right there with everybody else. But, boy, our truck just, it's not handling on this track right at all. You know, we done, I think, 4 passes here and been on our top 2 times. And
Okay, what causes that? Everybody else has made 4 passes. They haven't been flipping their truck. Why is yours going on a lid?
I don't know. We took all that weight out of it to get it competitive, and it seems like the the thing that got us back to be competitive is probably what's hurting us a little bit right now. But
Thanks a lot, Scott.
all right.
And now we take a look at Scott Stevens, the Texan in the King Krunch Auto Value truck. And he'll go up against, well, look at this thing. This, the aftermath, the ramifications of getting upside down. This is what happened yesterday. Now watch this run. He already has lost the doghouse on the front of that truck. And that's why they're built with roll cages.
Exactly. The chassis just completely unloaded on him. He and his crew chief, Tracy Smart, they knew the truck was going over as soon as it left the start line. Scott said he could just feel it. The red light bandit. Yeah, you wonder about the red light. You notice Bigfoot has it. So does Colt Cobra. That shows the electrical system in the truck is complete. If that light is not on, when you look at it from the front, that means there's an electrical problem somewhere. Speaking of problems, Scott Stevens is starting this race with a lot of problems.
Well, that's an open-air buggy right now, and it looks like he's going to pull out the victory. Yes, he does. Oh, the snake bite had him. That snake bite had him.
Boy, Scott is excited. He needed that run. It's like he's been punched in the nose so many times this year by punching. Yeah, exactly. To come back and to make a straight run is great, but to make a straight run and to put this other guy on a trailer, you can just feel it. Scott Stevens may have just turned his luck around in Canfield, Ohio.
He's upside down so many times this season, but he's never even thought about giving up. We spoke earlier of the good, bad, and the ugly, and here is the ugly. The Auto Value King Krunch, minus a whole lot of sheet metal with Scott Stevens. And he goes up against the micro machines of John Breen, the Breen's Boys Racing. Look at the battering the roll cage is taking.
I'm sitting there looking. Scott Stevens has a lot of trust in his chassis builder. That thing, and we're not talking like a 2,000-pound vehicle. We're talking 12, 14,000 pounds, and he's driving it hard. He's still going after him, Gary.
He has it. He has it.
All right.
And look at John
Left
Breen
lane.
almost tip up on the nose.
Out of the bad lane again. You know, I was so busy watching Scott. Breen had his hands full in the far lane.
All right, let's watch Scott again, right here, side by side through no man's land, under throttle though, and Scott takes the victory. He has to be ecstatic. He's with our Army Armstrong.
Well, they say adversity, I tell you what kind of man you're dealing with. Scott, I can't think of anybody in the sports had any more problems that you have, but you're still a player. You and the crew will not roll over, will not give this thing up at all.
Yeah, I guess we've been this way for 10 years. The harder those things slap you in the face, it's the harder we all kind of pull together and, argue and scream and holler at each other. And, the truck's working pretty good now. I'm still a little nervous about that left lane. So far all night I've been able to keep my right lane. Looks like next round I'll probably be able to keep it.
Gary Porter and the Carolina Crusher out of Wadesboro, North Carolina. Now the state of Texas, a battered but still drivable King Krunch, the Auto Value King Krunch of Scott Stevens.
These spectators here are really getting to see some great monster truck racing. They appreciate everybody, but you got an odds-on favorite. You know who it is here. Everybody is kind of pulling for Scott Stevens. They know he's had a tough weekend, but when that light goes green, Scott Stevens has one enemy in this world. That's going to be Gary Porter.
You can't really call Scott Stevens an underdog, but he is so battered up this season. The fans want to see him do well here in Canfield. So it's Chevy against modified Chevy. There's the left lane with the advantage to Scott. Does something break right there, Army, because Gary Porter takes the victory.
Well, like I say, Porter was not going to cut him any slack at all. He knew Stevens had the potential to beat him, so when the light goes green, Porter goes south big time. It's a good race to right here. Bounce comes to Porter. Wacko, he goes to the win.
Once again, the new style suspension. The truck settles down. The horsepower takes command, and Gary Porter wins it. Here's a look at John Moore out of Lafayette, Tennessee, and a short wheelbase. Another strategy or theory in monster truck racing alongside Scott Stevens in the Auto Value King Krunch. So we have a, well, actually, that's supposed to be a Chevrolet.
I was going to ask you what kind of body style
that's a Chevrolet against a Ford product. Now, this was yesterday. Scott Stevens has had a black cloud hanging over his head. Look at this. Once again, sky, ground, and he's upside down again.
And Canfield all over his head now when he landed on his head here. But you're going to race, you got to race.
Tear off the sheet metal, in this case fiberglass. The truck is in good condition, and here is Scott Stevens, the far lane, the left lane, lane 2, and it looks like
whoa, John Moore.
Stevens by a fender, if he had a fender.
Yeah. Oh, he's still trying to shut it down. The throttle may have hung a little bit. No, I think he's just happy. He is. He's just happy that he's not on his head.
Well, let's watch him run again. John Moore almost nipped him right at the finish line.
Yeah, John Moore almost caught him in the air. Watch the launch here.
John just needed a longer wheelbase, and there's been a tie.
I guarantee you.
Oh, look at this. Looks like the remnants of a demolition derby. This is Scott Stevens in the Auto Value King Krunch. That thing has been upside down more than it's been right side up. And it goes up against a brand new truck, Jack Willman Sr. out of Granite City, Illinois, in the Chevy Taurus.
I'm anxious to see what kind of a mindset that Scott Stevens has right now. I'll be very honest, Gary. If I were in that truck, I'm not sure that I would push it very hard. We're going to find out what kind of a monster truck racer is. If he goes after Taurus, and he is, look at this, he's not afraid of him.
The Taurus has the advantage right there, and he takes it by about 2 truck lengths.
Yeah, but Scott was running him as hard as he could. I think Stevens, you know, the proverbial getting back up on the horse after it's thrown you, we may have just witnessed that right here, but Stevens and the crew, they'll get it all figured out, but they got another whole round not to worry about now. Taurus will be going to that next one.
And here is a battered truck at best, Scott Stevens out of Spring, Texas. And there is a Jack Willman Sr. out of Granite City, Illinois.
Scott and his crew have been walking around the pit area all day long whistling zippity-doo-dah. That's the kind of attitude you got to have when you're in this kind of shape. You got to believe in what you're doing, and he's picking up points. That is important. Hey, he's running hard
over the first set of cars, but Jack Willman will take the victory, and Jack will advance to the championship round here in Canfield, Ohio. He takes Taurus to the championship.
Taurus is going against the snake bite, but Scott Stevens, it's been a major damn accomplishment for him. He and the Auto Value team have picked up a lot of points.
Well, that should make for a very interesting pairing for the... Gary Lee along with Army Armstrong at the Union Grove, Wisconsin Fairgrounds for the 4-wheel and off-road Jamboree Northern Nationals. We have had problems here this afternoon. We're trying to get them rectified right now. Let's go back trackside, and here's Army.
Well, Gary, we kind of got a handle on this thing. Scott Stevens, driver of the Auto Value Special. Scott, what's the word?
They're shorting the track. You know, it's pretty evident that, you know, this left lane's not safe for the speeds we're running. And, you know, they got to worry about the crowd and the safety of these guys. You know, you've got a $100,000 truck. You've lost 2 of them already. And, you know, everybody's got to change their whole thought of racing. The gears and everything we're set up for is racing for a longer track. We don't have time to change the gears. We got to go in and race. The track's about half the length. But, you know, safety is what we got to worry about. And, you know, that's what they're changing for. You know, I'm pretty happy that they're doing it because, you know, we've rolled over 3 times this year, and I'm not really, you know, happy about running those kind of speeds on a bad track. If it's a good track, I don't mind it, but you know, this track here is terrible.
Okay. Well, Gary, that brings to point an interesting fact that these tracks are completely different everywhere they go. There is a common denominator. It is safety, but what you're going to see for the rest of the day, I guarantee you, is just a full boogaloo throwdown. That light goes green, they're going to mash the motor and fly one time. The guy that lands is going to be the winner. Let's see who it's going to be. They're ready to go racing again.
You hear from Scott Stevens, the track has been shortened. There is now the starting line in what normally would be no man's land. They have taken out or eliminated the first jump, the first set of cars, and there is the reason why, as Snakebite still on top that crushed concession. Take a look at Bigfoot Andy Brass showing off his brand new haircut. Bigfoot 8 out of St. Louis, Missouri. He is the second fastest qualifier. There is a look at Scott Stevens out of Texas in the Auto Value.
I noticed that Scott Stevens picked up the new Simpson hat as his crew chief goes to check out the top end of the truck. They've got a problem. The truck completely shut off. I brought a mention about the new Simpson safety equipment because Stevens has been on his head so much this year. He's a testimonial for the safety equipment people in this sport. If they weren't building good stuff, he'd have been hurt by now.
I had a chance to visit with him recently at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He and his young son were there for a visit. He said, I'm tired of getting upside down. We have to turn this season around. Excuse the pun.
Play on words. And what it is, they've got there's a little screw is the word we're getting. There was something right there. Tracy Smart holding it. This could almost be a case of sabotage. There was a wood screw. Now, why would you have a wood screw around any kind of a racing vehicle that was hung in the injection throttle there?
Are you trying to imply something, Army?
I'll say this, that there's no reason in the world a wood screw should ever be around any kind of racing vehicle like this.
Well, apparently the problem has been resolved, and this will be the final shootout in round 1.
Whoa!
What a great hole shot for but look at the horsepower of the big Ford as Bigfoot outpowers King Krunch for the victory.
He literally had to catch him in the air. Yeah, but they're okay. They didn't tear the truck up. They entered on all fours. So psychologically, King Krunch and Scott Stevens will come out a winner. But Andy Brass literally flies to the wind, passes him in midair, Gary.
Here's a guy who's no stranger to victory lane. The Big A Auto Parts Carolina Crusher. Gary Porter against Scott Stevens in the Auto Value King Krunch.
But keep an eye on him, because right now he's got a full body on him. Earlier in qualifying, take a look at what happened, though.
He's been upside down so many times this season. He almost got upside down again. He's out of control. Now watch him go through these Hydra barriers. They're filled with water. He takes a shower, but at least keeps it sunny side up. Oh, he's had all kinds of trouble this season with that truck.
That chassis is just tweaked. It's bent some way, and he's got to figure it out. Now, we're on board with him right now. He gives a thumbs up to the starter, waiting for the light to go green. Man, let's hope for a straight run.
Carolina Crusher, the far lane, and Gary Porter takes the victory.
Oh, here we go again.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. We've talked about this in shows past. I mean, I think they have to take that truck back to Texas, take it all the way down to the bare frame, and almost start from scratch, because it's certainly not the driver. We have seen this Scott in victory lane before, but not this season.
No, I'm looking at something. You notice the change in Scott? He went to one of the new Simpson helmets. Okay, all the safety equipment, all these actions he's having is making him awfully aware of it. If nothing else, he's a great testimonial.
Yeah, he had the old full-face helmet, and
yeah.
Now he has that Simpson full-face skid lid, and he certainly has had to put that helmet to use this season. Once again, into the Hydra barriers. Well, now you can see how they work, though.
Yeah, they work. That's the whole thing. By his bad luck, the sport's finding out that the right combination is the kill box and the hydro barriers.
Well, once again, Gary Porter takes the victory, but really the spotlight was on Scott Stevens, because he's the guy that got in trouble.
Yeah, Porter was just out walking the dog. Meanwhile, Stevens gone fishing.
Hell, Scott's using some very expensive fishing tackle, if that's the case, Army. He's getting lots of airtime. Every time he crashes, we talk to him. Once again, here's Scott.
Scott, it seems like no matter what you do, the truck almost has a mind of its own. It's going to the left after the second jump.
Yeah, you know, it's every race here lately at the finish line, it's kind of reacting on what it's going to do. I don't know, evidently the power steering pump may be cavitating or something at that RPM, because when it lands after the second set, it just does what it wants to do. And, you know, luckily the safety that the MTRA has saved our truck, didn't hurt no parts, and the killers worked really good, everything did good. You know, it didn't hurt nothing on the truck, but, you know, I'm not for sure if from the chassis being a little tweaked from the wrecks from the last few weeks or steering pumps. It's hard to say. It's just pretty frustrating to know every time that light turns green that the chances seem like they're going against us, because, you know, we're rolling over almost every other lap.
I'll tell you what, a few crashes like that will tweak your psyche, that's for sure. Every time we take a look at the Auto Value King Krunch of Scott Stevens out of Spring, Texas. It's been a tough season for Scott. He's been upside down a number of times, trying to turn that season around as he goes up against Steve Hess. Steve Hoosier from Columbia City, Indiana, and he drives Nightmare.
Well, Hess will be driving under the banner of the PENDA Liner Corporation. They make some of the finest bed liners in the world. Meanwhile, Auto Value supports Scott Stevens, so we do have corporate involvement here. Whoa, Hess drilled him on the line. Can Stevens pull him back? No, he's not going to do it, Gary.
You can see the old suspension work, but he had the horsepower to pull it out.
Exactly.
He got the whole shot. And Steve Hess takes the victory in Nightmare. So the GMC will have to face off with Bigfoot in the quarterfinals. Look again. There's the whole shot, but watch the stiff suspension.
Well, both drivers are literally having to drive these trucks all the way. And then when they land, you just hold on.
A wild paint job on Wild Thing. Jim Booker behind the steering wheel from St. James, Missouri, and Scott Stevens in the blue and yellow Auto Value King Krunch Chevrolet.
Well, Gary, you got both ends of the spectrum. To the left, the old veteran, the wily veteran, been around a long time. On the right, closer to the camera now, the new kid on the block. Hey, first half of the race, he's running him tough. Check this out.
Well, I think there's a mechanical problem over there in King Krunch as Wild Thing takes the victory. Jim Booker will advance to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, but Gary, you played the racing game long enough to know you take this win like you would any other win. Booker, in his freshman year, that has got to be one of the biggest wins he's had, Gary.
Here's a look at the Ford Boss Gator. This is Jimmy Harrington, another local boy out of Florida, out of LaBelle, Florida. And he pulls up alongside the Texan, Scott Stevens, the Auto Value King Krunch. And Scott has had a tough year so far. He's been upside down a number of times.
Yeah, he spent, I think, more time on his lid than he has on tires, but that's racing. That's the kind of competition you're going to see here. Something else you're going to see here, the old style trucks in the far lane, Stevens with the new style truck. We keep talking about that, but once the spectator at home can see the difference, look at that. The new suspension, this sport, the technology in this sport is phenomenal.
Well, it's certainly a problem, though, with the Boss Gator Ford truck.
Well, it was just too stiff. It's too rough a ride. Stevens, like I say, he absorbed the energy like a sponge. This will be a good class project for a mathematics teacher all over the country. Kids can figure out how absorbing that energy works.
There's a look at Gary Porter in the Carolina Crusher, and he goes up against the Auto Value King Krunch of Scott Stevens.
These guys have gone head-to-head many, many times, Gary. It's a heads-up race. GMC on the left, Chevrolet on the right. They know the game plan. When that goes green, we're racing. Porter, dark line. Stevens got to pull him back on the other end.
Oh, Porter gets him by a fender. Porter has always said he likes the long outdoor tracks, and that truck has always had the horsepower. It's always had the muscle. It might get beaten off the start, but he has the muscle down through no man's land.
Yep. On monster truck racing, you've got the first jump. Then this area right here is where they can plant the horsepower and fly. That's what Porter did.
Porter wins it by a fender, and look at this. They almost get together in the shutdown area. They certainly respect each other's driving. But first, we have this semifinal matchup between this guy right here, the youngster Eldon Depew in Taurus, and he goes up against Scott Stevens out of Texas in the Auto Value King Krunch.
You got to remember, Gary, Depew has been late all day long off the starting line. The trucks had to make a lot of horsepower at mid-range in order for him to get to the final four. Stevens knows that. Hey, now Depew is on time on that light.
Depew was off the line, and he had the horsepower and takes what most would consider an easy victory. There is Taurus. He will go into our championship shootout here this afternoon in Naples as we take a look again.
I'll tell you what, the kid was on the light. Congratulations to him. You know, time in the seat, you know how important it is. Well, he seems to be awfully relaxed, but the most important thing, he's half the final. Who's going to be the second half? That's the big question, Gary.
Well, he went to school the first two rounds, and he took what he learned to that semifinal round to knock off the Auto Value King Krunch and Scott Stevens. Take a look at the Auto Value King Krunch of Scott Stevens. Look at his driving position right in the middle of the cockpit, driving the GMC out of Woodlands, Texas. That is actually a mid-engine vehicle, and he's parked right in the middle of the cockpit. He goes up against a Toyota. That's a Toyota body, but a 454 Chevrolet power plant.
You got to give them none. That's Scott Palmer. He's a Jacksonville, Florida area guy. He wants to run with these fellas, but I think you're going to have a real good opportunity here to see what a traveling pro truck is like, the Auto Value truck of Stevens, and a guy that's trying to work his way into the sport. There is a difference. A lot of people don't realize the technology in the newer trucks. These guys are serious.
It's like a local driver in a sprint car going up against a USAC regular or the World of Outlaws when they come to town.
Exactly.
But the fans certainly show their appreciation, and there is a Scott Stevens who has certainly had his difficulties over the past couple of years. He's been upside down more than I think any other driver, perhaps more than all the other drivers combined. But he has an easy victory here over a local driver from Jacksonville.
At the finish line, Stevens hooks left, but look at the guy on the left lane. He's coming around to the right. His steering went completely away, Gary.
Yeah, look at the rear steer on that Toyota truck as they go away from you now. Watch Scott Stevens as he veers off to the left. And look at the problem with the Toyota. They're kind of square dancing. They're crisscrossing. Here's Scott.
Gary, this guy I'm standing with, experience what Andy Brass was talking about, that being not clearing the last set of cars and the rear end actually clipping that last car and springing you up.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it really hit pretty hard, and I drove her just as far as I could all the way out the very back because never did really feel that stable. But that was a real good run for us, and, you know, real happy didn't hurt no parts, and we're going another round.
We'll see you in that round.
All right, thank you, Army.
Some frustration on the part of some drivers back in the pit area.
Any guy that wears yellow gloves that color stands between two monster trucks I am not going to argue with.
Well, there is the Taurus truck of Eldon Depew and the Auto Value King Krunch of Scott Stevens. This is round two competition from the south of Florida. We're in Naples. What a beautiful location for motorsports. They drained the swamp to bring on the monsters, and look at that. Look at that. That is a thorough thrashing by Eldon Depew, and there's a happy one there. But look at Eldon lock it up and slide to a stop in the mud.
Gary, this is just one of those days where everything is starting to fall into place for the tourist truck.
But right now, there is a cloud of controversy circulating around Eldon DePulis. Here's the GMC Auto Value King Krunch of Scott Stevens, and there's the Chevrolet, the Carolina Crusher of Gary Porter. The winner here goes on to face Foote for the championship.
And we know the final is going to be Ford versus GMC, or General Motors against Ford Motor Corporation.
And it's going to be the Chevy of Gary Porter.
Now, he cleared that final set of cars. First interview of the day, Andy Brass said, you've got to clear the final set of cars. The big question here, who's going to have lane choice to get in that right lane? That could determine the winner.
So it will be Ford against Chevrolet. Give the fans something to cheer about here in Naples. Look once again. Now, Scott Stevens got the whole shot. Again, it's the horsepower right here, and he clears that last set of cars. Now we take a look at the Texan, Scott Stevens, the Auto Value King Krunch. That's a GMC product out of Woodlands, Texas. Scott always with a big smile, a favorite with the crowd here. And he goes up against Jack Brady, a Pennsylvanian, with Kemosabe. That's a Jeep, something we don't normally see on the circuit.
Well, this vehicle, the Kemosabe vehicle, like you say, is not on the circuit that much. We did have a chance to see him outdoors earlier. He made a unique wheel stand when he ran outdoors. I don't know if he's changed the chassis or not. There it is.
Another
there
wheel
it is
stand.
again. Yeah, the short wheelbase type
With a lot of
suspension.
horsepower.
Yeah, with a lot of horsepower, you can just see the bounce. Meanwhile, we're watching a wheel stand, and Stevens rolls over into the next lounge.
Well, now we can see what Scott does as he will go for the victory here. But watch the wheel stand. Once again, you talk about a tight suspension, a lot of horsepower, a short wheelbase. It all combines to do this right here. He nails the throttle, goes over that second set of cars, and there is the wheel
He
stand.
very easily could have gone
Back over.
Yeah. And
In the hydroplane racing, they'd call it a blowover.
Exactly.
Here, you just call it bad luck in monster truck racing. All right, there's a look at Scott Stevens in the Auto Value King Krunch.
You know, we talked earlier about John Moore wanting to do good for his sponsor. One of the biggest GMC dealers in America is from Minneapolis, Indiana. I know Scott wants to put on a good show for him, but in order to do it, he's got to get past this kid right here.
Tropical Thunder. That's Wayne Smozanik. Of course, we're speaking of Ray Skillman, GMC, on the south side of Indianapolis. He races stock cars. Maybe we'll see Ray in a monster truck sometime.
I don't know. I think he's going to let this kid from Texas carry the GMC colors for him. Meanwhile, he's doing just that. He's carrying him into the next round.
Well, the Auto Value King Krunch takes the victory. Let's take a look at the replay.
Gary, when they left the starting line, Stevens had his truck completely under control. We've been talking a lot about suspension, chassis, and everything, but Scott Stevens brings out another interesting factor here. His motor is located in the middle of the truck. It's a mid-mounted motor. He's doing that to balance the truck, and it's working for him. Gary, I understand you're with him right now.
Quarterfinal victory going to Scott Stevens and King Krunch, the Auto Value truck, but you used all the runoff space you could down there.
Yeah, you know, I heard some noise clanging up. It sounded like a clanging, but it probably was just a 4-link bar with a little bit of slop in it. Didn't want to get on the brakes real hard in case it was something broke, and if I hit the brakes, you know, I might roll the rear end out from under the truck. But the truck's not hurt. It's ready to go to the next round. Just want to thank CarQuest for having this event and Auto Value Parts Stores for giving us enough money to be here.
We take a look at the Auto Value King Krunch, and that is Scott Stevens out of Texas.
Gary, you know, as we get into this Final Four, this could be known as the round of reckless abandonment. Every one of these guys are going to do something goofy before it's over. I've just got
controlled mayhem.
Yeah, exactly. We're all in a
Something
big
goofy.
building with 1,500 horsepower and 20,000-pound trucks jumping things. Hey, something weird has got to happen.
Send your letters to Army Armstrong. We're going to have something goofy here in the Hoosier Dome.
What did I say? Watch it.
Look at him pull the trigger on the Auto Value King Krunch, but where did Carolina Crusher come from?
What I
Where
said,
did he
normally
come
Gary
from?
Porter's the leader. Stevens knew that. You get out of the Final Four in this kind of competition, you just never know.
Stevens had him. Stevens had him. He pulls a great light. Look at this.
Yeah. Whole shot to Stevens. Porter, though, settles down right now. Bursts the throttle,
And he wins
plants
it
the
right
horsepower,
there.
and flies past him. You know, what can you